Welcome back to Custom Guns and Reloading. This is part 4 of the Rosco 16-inch upper build. And before we get started, just a quick note about the equipment and stuff needed for this series of next steps. First thing you're going to need is a vise, and you need to have the vise mounted to a solid, sturdy table. You can't have some kind of particle board crap table. You need to have a solid, you're going to be putting some torque. So a vise mounted to a solid table. My personal setup, and I may actually do a whole video on this, is I have my vise mounted to an 8-inch by 8-inch by 1-inch plastic sheet, and then I just use 6-inch C-clamps to clamp it to my desk here in the office. So that's how I mount my vise, and it's super sturdy. The other thing you're going to need is a torque wrench, and you're going to need a barrel nut wrench. If your handguard comes with a proprietary barrel nut, they should also come with a wrench for that barrel nut. If not, usually we'll just take a standard like castle nut type pattern wrench. And you're also going to need a Midwest Industries upper receiver rod, which is what this is currently mounted onto right here. This will secure the upper internally via the lugs, so that when you put the 50 to 60 foot-pounds of torque on there, that rotational force does not cause any mistiming between the upper and the barrel. So it secures the barrel and the upper at the same time to prevent mistiming and stress on the index pin. And it could also, if you don't secure there and you only have it secured via these takedown pin holes, for example, it could egg those holes out. So always best practice to use a tool like this. You could also, if you want to do a slightly less expensive option, is the Magpul bev block. So Magpul bev block is all you really need. This is a little more robust, so I like that one. And then the other thing is aeroshell. Some aeroshell grease. Okay, that is for greasing the threads here and on the shoulder here, so that you don't get any galling between the barrel nut and the threads on the upper or on the shoulder. So it just helps prevent any issues when trying to disassemble. You won't have them stuck together. So the other thing worth mentioning before I actually torque this barrel nut on is examine, once you get your barrel actually mounted into the upper, examine the area right here where the feed ramps in the upper meet the feed ramps on the barrel extension, and get a little toothpick or the end of one of these Q-tip things and see if you catch any edges on here. I don't know if you guys can tell. Okay, and if you catch an edge, you may want to file that down a little bit. I was catching a slight edge on the one side, so I filed that down. This other side of mine was fine. So just a sort of quick thing to know. You can do this whenever. This is just where I happen to slot this step into my process. You can do it once the full upper is done, really, if you want. But to me, it's just a little more maneuverable. You don't have all kinds of stuff on here yet with the handguard and barrel nut and everything. So okay, so now we're gonna slide this on, and this tool actually functions. You can take this little sail off with these screws, and it'll actually function exactly like a Geisley reaction rod. So it's kind of like a 2-in-1 in a way. Or if you get the Geisley reaction rod, it doesn't have this sail. This is just another way to secure the upper in the charging handle slot area. So it's a little bit more secure, I guess, than the reaction rod, but both of them are very secure. Slide that on all the way. And we're going to apply, I don't know if you can see, we're going to apply the aeroshell around here and on the shoulder part here. And then we can torque. So the CAC spec, I think, is 35 to 55 foot-pounds. And I usually try to do the higher end, so I'll probably do 55 to 60-ish foot-pounds. And we'll go from there. You also want to season the barrel nut on the threads a few times, so you'll see me do that here while I install it. That just pretty much means you can tighten it pretty much up to your torque spec and then loosen it a couple times, and you do that 2 to 3 times. It seems like when the first time you tighten it down, it's a little harder to loosen, so if you sort of pre-tighten and pre-loosen it a couple times, it's easier to disassemble a little bit. All right, here we go. You only need a little bit. Just get a little bit on the Q-tip here, and I'm going to just apply a couple spots around the threads here. I always grab a little extra cleaning cloths when doing this step in case you get some grease all over your upper. It helps you clean it up a little bit. Okay. Here's my barrel nut. You can also put a little bit of grease inside here if you want, around. There's a little shoulder in here, but I think there's already some. Maybe I'll do a teeny extra. Okay, that's all you really need. Just kind of manually season it a little bit here. Just unscrew it a few times. Okay. Have your barrel nut wrench at 90 degrees to your torque wrench. Most torque wrenches are only they'll only click going one direction, and almost all of them it's clockwise. So make sure your switch here is oriented so that you're going clockwise. This is set to we'll check our setting here. This is 55. So I'll tighten this close a couple times. Line up our slots. Here we go. And it's okay to go to loosen it with the torque wrench if you know the current foot-pound that it was installed in. If you don't, then you should use a breaker bar. Now I'm going to loosen it. Oh, see. Apologies for the sound there. It's probably kind of harsh. Now I'm going to go back, do it one more time. Now I'm going to loosen it. Okay, see, it was a little easier that time. Now I'm just going to tighten it all the way to 55. And I don't believe you need to time this CAC barrel nut, but I don't know. We'll see how it looks once There we go. All right, we're done. Take our barrel nut. Okay, now we're actually going to take a quick walk over to the garage, and I'm going to show you how I installed the gas tube into the gas block. Okay, so you can see here I've used this Midwest Industries lower vice block, I think is what it's called. But it's very handy because it has this little cutout area for you that holds the gas block perfectly. Now you can do it without this, but it just makes it so much easier. And I think this thing's 20-30 bucks. So between this tool and the Magpul Bev block, you can pretty much do any kind of work you need to do on your upper or lower. Because this thing also will double as a block that you can attach to your magwell in the lower, and you can do lower work. So this is a what is this, 5/64? Yeah, this is 5/64 size roll pin. Oops, sorry. And I like to use the White Oak Armament gas tube roll pins. It's this nice spiral style roll pin. It's not the C or the just regular roll pin. Those are, you can kind of use once and you're supposed to be done. They lose their tension. I think you could probably get away with using them 2 or 3 times, but I just prefer the spiral kind. It just looks like a little coiled up piece of metal instead of like a C. So yeah, I can just get it started a little bit with the hammer, and then make sure your gas tube and everything is lined up, and then you just hit it home with the hammer, and you can use the punch to when you get close to getting it flush so you don't mess up your metal. That's just a quick note here on what I use and how I install the gas tube into the gas block. All right, that'll do it for this one, and hope you tune in for the next one. Thanks. Bye-bye.